the executive director of City Hope, and part of what our organization does is help people leave a violent situation. And I wanted to go over a few of our key skills that we use in communicating with the clients that we are assisting. And normally we spend a great deal of time training on these. And so this is more designed to be an overview and to help you capture the things that are going to be significant when it comes to interacting with your clients. The things that we want to highlight, how we want to lead conversations and draw out certain aspects in order for your client to, one, feel heard and feel like you understand what's happening, and two, be receptive for the collaboration that the two of you are going to have going forward. So our skills, we have an acronym for them. They are our caring skills, CARING. And our first one, our C, is called contacting. And if this is somebody that you've had an ongoing interaction and rapport with, then this is really quite simple. You already have the rapport and you can just reach out to the person, or they may be reaching out to you. But if it's not somebody that you have an interaction with prior to this situation, the main things that we want to do with this skill is introduce ourselves, let them know why we're there, and honestly, just get them talking. Get them to start telling us part of what's happening and part of the story. So it might be something like, my name is Danny, and I understand that that you're navigating potentially a difficult situation, and I'd love to be able to be of any help that I might be able to. Can you fill me in on what's happening and what's going on? And just to get them to start talking so that we can build that rapport and begin to process through some of the harder parts of the call. So just that simple. We want to make sure that when we are approaching them, when we're having this conversation, that we're at their level. We don't want to be towering over them. We want to be close in proximity by their side if possible. And we just want to be nice and slow and calm. These types of situations can invoke a great deal of intensity. We want to try to minimize that as much as possible and really feel safe for them to be able to talk to. So the A in our caring skills is active listening. And we hear a lot about active listening, but this is absolutely critical. We have to listen intently to each aspect of the call. And more importantly, we have to make sure that they know that we're listening. They need to feel heard. If they don't feel like we have a good understanding of the totality of the situation, then they're not going to put a lot of stock in our solutions yet. How can we have solutions if we don't know the problems? And so you want to make sure that you're very intensely listening. And you can use some of our active listening skills, nodding along and those minimal encouragers, asking open-ended questions to keep them giving you more information and keep them talking. And making sure that you're not distracted and you're listening. You can paraphrase, repeat back to them the last few things that they said. At the end of a period of them sharing, give them a really good summary of what you've heard them talk about. And if in your summary there's something that you left out that they bring in, man, then you know that that piece of information is important and significant to them. And that gives you that type of insight. So this applies to every interaction with your particular client. We have to listen actively and intently. The R in our caring skills is resilience building. And under this, we do two things. One, protect, and two, empower. So for domestic violence calls, some of the protection is obvious, right? We need to try to protect them from further violence. We need to try to protect them in that moment if they have just fled. We're thinking all of our safety planning type things with if they're trackable, those types of things, with GPS and with cell phones and all of that. So we want to make sure that physically they are safe. We're looking to protect them from themselves. Sometimes people in those situations may make poor decisions. Maybe they want to go right back and just tell their abuser off. And obviously that's not a wise decision. And so we're going to try to guide them and protect them from their own impulsive decisions. We want to protect them from some negative thoughts that they may have. They may be second guessing their choices and the things that they did, and we want to make sure that they understand that this was a difficult and challenging situation, and help reinforce the positive decisions and responses that they've had in that type of situation. And so that's protection. Physically, what do we need to protect them for? Mentally, what are some of their thoughts that we can discuss with them and give them greater insight into? And then our other part of protecting is empowering. And a domestic violence victim most likely has spent time being disempowered and being spoken against and having their personal attributes demeaned. And so we need to help build their confidence because we know that they need to work on this. They need to be able to trust themselves in the midst of it. And so to do this, we want to highlight their wise choices, highlight anything that you saw that they did well or that showed wisdom. If they're a parent, sometimes we do this by speaking directly to what they've done and how they've handled it with their child or children. Things like, I see such wisdom in how you navigated that conversation with your child, or all I hear from you is this amazing mama's heart or daddy's heart that loves your child, and I love that that's the thought process that you have going forward in this. Sometimes they may second guess themselves and say, I should have done this, or I can't believe I allowed this to happen. We want to highlight the challenging circumstances that they found themselves in. We're not always dealt the best cards to be able to, and the best hand to be able to play. We got to play what we're dealt. And in some such situations, they need to know that it was a little stacked against them. And they've done well to get to the point where they are now. And so we want to really empower their wise choices. We want to make sure that we're not taking too much away from them, that we're not over helping them such that they're relying completely on us and they don't have to do anything. That's disempowering. We want to empower them and work with them, help overcome obstacles, but recognizing that they're the ones that need to walk this out. Yes, with our support, but we don't want to overhelp, and we don't want to make them feel like they don't have wise thoughts and they can't navigate this well. We need to try to build their confidence by empowering. So that's our resilience building. It's protecting and empowering. And then our next letter I is identifying next steps. And literally making a list of the things that they need to do, the thoughts that they're having, what's priority in their hearts and their minds. And we'll literally just help them make a list of those things and identify what their next steps are. If you have a safety planning checklist, which I highly recommend, literally you can give that to them, and it goes through and it talks about all the things that they need to think about and good protocols and good steps to make sure that they can leave the violent situation safely when it's time to leave, as well as if for whatever reason they're not going to leave and they're going to stay in the home, what can be done to try to keep them as safe as possible. So our safety planning checklists come in huge here. Customize it for the particular situation of your particular client, and then they'll know the things that need to be done. You want to look at that list and determine what can be done immediately and what can wait, so that they're not overwhelmed by a long, daunting list if it's some things that don't need to be done right then. So literally identifying the next steps. Our N is normalizing. We want to inform and reassure them. And this is very important because there's a lot of information that they need, and we normalize it by letting them know what to expect, what standard protocol is. And the types of information that they may need is things about how domestic violence laws work in their state. Many states have a rule for law enforcement that says that if they arrive and there's a domestic violence situation, that they have to identify who the primary aggressor was and arrest has to be made. Sometimes that needs to be normalized for the client. They may feel like it's all my fault, he was arrested. No, you called, it was the right thing to do, and the law ties the hands of the officers. We might need to normalize the process for restraining orders so that they understand what that process looks like and who has what rights and what all of that is. We might need to normalize the fact that it takes a while sometimes for people to leave. Maybe they're regretting that they didn't do this sooner, and we just need to normalize that this is a process. Maybe they feel overwhelmed. And we need to normalize their feelings and their reactions and let them know that that is perfectly normal and natural, and that we understand that there is a lot involved in this, but it's still the right decision. So all of those things. With domestic violence, I've often had to normalize for clients who would say things like, but I still love him. Why do I still love him? Sometimes we have to normalize that they have seen good in this person. And so it's normal to still have some mixed feelings, and that's fine. That's perfectly reasonable. However, because of the violence, an adjustment needed to be made, and they made the adjustment. So maybe you're helping to normalize feelings. Even the fact that it happens, they may be hugely concerned for their children in a domestic violence situation, and to normalize the fact that it happens, and there's resources available and there's connections available to be able to help their children process well through that. And that's part of that reassuring process, reassuring that there's steps they can take, reassuring that there's organizations that can help, and honestly that there's a way for them to be able to heal from this, that children can go on and be healthy emotionally and mentally, that there's good things in place to be able to do that, so that people can go on with a wonderful life. Some of those types of things might be the things that you need to reassure your clients of. So that's the N, normalizing, informing, and reassuring. And finally, our G is grounding. And this is usually done toward the end of your time with this particular client, at least for this particular moment. You may have further interactions with them, but you take all of the things that have been spoken during the call and all of the things that helped bring peace to them, that you could see on their face, brought a sense of peace, all the things that were insightful and impactful, and you just re-emphasize them, and you just ground your client with those things. You give them the checklist that you made in identifying next steps, so they know what things they are that they need to do, and what comes first and when to do it. And you highlight how much you believe in them and the wisdom that they have shown along the way. And if there's anything that you agreed to do, you take ownership of that and let them know. And you can even identify, if possible, when the next contact is and what happens from here if something goes south, meaning that violence erupts and they need to do something about it. Take everything from the course of that call and you just kind of reinforce it and ground your client in that truth and that wisdom that you've been able to give them over the course of your time together. And those are, in general, our caring skills. We usually spend 30 to 40 hours training on it. So obviously a very, very brief overview. But my hope is that you walk away with the idea that you need to be nice and calm as you're interacting with your clients. You need to listen. You need to listen to their priorities. You need to listen to the things that are important to them. Help them prioritize their priorities. Don't dismiss priorities, but help them prioritize it. Number one, everybody stay safe. Number two, whatever their second priority is. And we can navigate through all their other priorities as long as that number one priority, that everybody stays safe, is respected and intact. And so you want to actively listen. You want to build their resilience by protecting them and empowering them. identifying next steps, that list, that safety training, safety planning list that you should have in advance. We're going to normalize, which means we're going to inform and we're going to reassure them of the things that they need to know along the way. And finally, we're going to wrap it all up with a nice big bow, and we're going to ground them in the truth and the insight and the wisdom that we were able to give them and that they recognized in the midst of our conversations. If you keep that in mind, that should greatly help being able to talk through effectively and honoring of a domestic violence victim that you might find yourself working with. Thank you.